We'll go on to our next, please.
Keith Mitchell. Much of the country is about to be devastated by the construction of HS2. How would the panel better spend £55 billion?
It makes the... There may be a particularly strong view in this hall because HS2, as it happens, runs not too far away from this town of Aylesbury. Bernard Jenkin, this makes an assumption in your question that it could be better spent, incidentally. Bernard Jenkin.
Well, personally, I'm very sorry that the proposals for a Thames Estuary Airport lost the argument against Heathrow on grounds of expense, because you could build a 4-runway, 24/7 global hub airport where most of the passengers arrive by public transport, close to London, to serve the whole of London and the South East and Northern Europe for less than it will cost to build HS2. And make Heathrow into a new high-tech city where so much of the infrastructure is already in place, and to build 250,000 new homes that we desperately need in the South East.
Joanna Cherry?
Well, I mean, it's a difficult one for me because when Lord Adonis introduced the idea of HS2, he described it as the Union Railway, and the idea was that it would go right up to Edinburgh or Glasgow. Now, I'm an Edinburgh MP, and if I get the train down to London, it takes me about 5 hours. If there was a fast-track train that went all the way to Edinburgh or Glasgow, I could get down in 3 hours, as I could do if I was French. I was in the south of France recently. One of my friends popped down for the weekend from Paris to Avignon, and it took him about 2.5 hours to get from Paris to Avignon. It's further from Paris to Avignon than it is from Edinburgh to London, but it takes me 5 hours on the train most days to get from Edinburgh to London. So I do think we need better public transport in this country. But the question really was, what would I spend £55 billion on? What I would spend £55 billion on is social housing. Social housing, we saw as a result of the Grenfell disaster, it is a real issue in England, and there has been a real lack of building of social housing. In Scotland, the Scottish Government have announced a house building plan of 50,000 houses, and 20,000 of those are going to be built in the capital city of Edinburgh. We need to build more social housing. Lots of the young people in this room will probably never be able to afford to get a mortgage the way house prices are going in England and indeed in parts of Scotland. So that's what I would spend the money on. But can I just point out to you, this £55 billion that's going to be spent on HS2, taxpayers in Scotland will be paying for it. But it's not going to come to Scotland, and there's no sign of it ever coming to Scotland because we're told there's no business case for that, which is ridiculous. If we are a union of equals, then there should be a high-speed train link from Edinburgh and Glasgow to London.
Andrew Adonis,
well,
what are you saying to the good people in this audience,
you can imagine
why they should welcome what you've done?
You can imagine how delighted I was when I heard that Any Questions was in Aylesbury. I immediately got out my dark glasses and false moustache. And when we launched the plans for HS2 7 years ago, and I did a public meeting not far away from here and said, to try and break the ice at the beginning, on my tombstone will be engraved the words HS2. Somebody shouted from the back, not soon enough.
Briefly, I'm very sorry, Luke Johnson.
I wouldn't spend £55 billion because it's going to be £80 billion at least. Because every government project ever like this overruns time, overruns costs. I think it will be very badly managed, a waste of money. I think it's a vanity project. This country has very significant government debt. We borrow money every single year just to keep going. And it sickens me that politicians, through their own egos, think they know best about these giant projects and squander taxpayers' money.
We've got very limited time. So you think it's the size of Lord Adonis's ego is the problem?
Throughout history, these are edifice complexes, I'm afraid. And the fact is that the railway, by the time it is ever finished, will be out of date because electric vehicles and other new forms of transport, which the private sector, which is much more innovative than the state sector, will achieve will mean that it becomes redundant, like the canals.
Okay.
I do want to squeeze one other topic on because we're getting lots of calls on it, and if we don't, I'll feel bad. HS2, lots of calls on this. 55 billion is the price tag that we were told on the programme it was going to cost. Is it worth it? Let's get two of you on together. Andrew Mason calling from Yorkshire, Bernard Whittaker calling from Newcastle. First of all, Andrew Mason, you don't even believe this £55 billion price tag is real?
No, I mean, it's abject nonsense, isn't it? You know, the
How do you know? How do you know? Sorry, what's the expertise that you've got?
Well, first of all, I'm in the construction sector. It started off at 32 billion. They're now saying 56 billion. Treasury are working on 80 billion, and the broadsheets are printing 100 billion. But the point I'd just like to make, where I think Lord Adonis was completely wrong, it is just basically a gravy train. What we're seeing is actually people who are actually just feeding on the fact that all this money is being sloshed about by central government. There is no business case for it. There never has been. There's no environmental case. And if you think about the loss of habitat that this country is suffering, then why should we do that when the major projects authority has been saying for the last 6 years, this is amber red, it's a serious threat of failing.
All right, we are out of time almost. Just a couple of points. I can't get to you, Bernard, and I apologise. I promise to make it up to you one day. If HS2 is to be privately run, why aren't the private companies paying for it? Says Pam Crossland and many, many others.